got a question for you. Do you ever think about what superheroes are doing when they are not trying to save the world with their superpowers? If you pay attention to the comics and the movies, you'll find out that what they're really doing most of the time is just trying to blend in. They're trying to have normal lives. They're trying to live hidden in plain sight. And for somebody with mental health issues like myself, that's pretty familiar. That's what we spend a good part of our time trying to do, is to blend in, live hidden in plain sight, so that people aren't talking about us and our diagnoses as something that is bad or evil. And like other superheroes, it's a little tricky. There's a different thing that each superhero has to do. I mean, think about the difference between Peter Parker and Bruce Banner. So much easier to hide spidey senses than it is a big hulking green guy, right? So this is what it's like for those of us. And I have to say that I've been really lucky in my time. Most of my stuff I'd like to think is skewed to the spidey senses end of things. But regardless of how my superpowers have emerged, my lived experience, the one thing I realized is that they've shaped exactly who I am. And they've actually influenced a lot of my successes in life. And so it's one of those things where I stop and think about, you know, where these things have taken me. And they've taken me to some pretty interesting places. I had a phenomenal career as an academic. I taught at a bunch of different universities and a variety of programs. It clearly influences my geek life, just in case you hadn't noticed I was a geek, which includes the superhero world. And also, it's so cool to follow Kevin because I already know him, but he's also now the only person I know who's been on SNL at the same time as BTS. Just saying. So there's another part of my fandom. But the thing is it took me to some pretty interesting places that also includes the fact that, again, some of you may recognize me from my previous appearances on bus benches and the 6 o'clock news when I was your health minister. So it was one of those kinds of things that, like I said, it's done some really cool things. And for the most part, as much as these things have frankly caused me some shit in my life, for the most part, they've done things, they've helped me achieve things that were frankly acceptable. And so that's why my superpowers and I got to live hidden in plain sight, because I was checking off all the right boxes. Now, in true superhero style, I will start off with my origin stories. Here's a news flash. According to my mother, I was born mid-sentence and I have not shut up since. And so I was that kid that did things at an early age. Walking, talking, I was in advanced programs, IB, 2 degrees at the University of Manitoba simultaneously, Dean's Honor List, juggling jobs, showing up at the bar, including this one, regular basis, blah, 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 blah. I was that kid. I was that person. And again, at that point, nobody would have ever thought of diagnosing me or medicating me, as annoying as my high energy might have been. Now, don't get me wrong. There were jokes about capping me in the ass with a tranquilizer gun to slow me down, but nobody was giving me any mental health labels. Well, in true superhero style, after an origin story, there's always a plot twist. Picture a scene. There's a car going over the bridge coming the highway at Wilkes. 25-year-old, single mom, grad student in that car, with her infant son, and the speech bubble above her head in the comic strip says, "If I just move my arm a little bit to the right, this will all be over. It'll be better for both of us. My pain will end and he won't be an orphan." Next frame, fortunately, some part of my brain went, "Oh, hold on, that's not nearly as friggin' rational a thought as you thought it was a minute ago." So we safely get home, I call the doctors, and suicidal ideation and postpartum depression are the first of my superpowers to hulk out on me. I am now a member of the Superpower Blending In program, which, by the way, is unfortunately not a part of SHIELD. So you are on your own. So there I am, figuring out for the first time in my life, how do I blend in? How do I make sure that people don't know what the stuff that's going on? So part of my brain is in this depressive, anxious despair. Another part of my brain goes, hold on, we got this. ADHD and OCD kick in and go, hey, you know that thing that your profs liked before, where you would take these swaths of information and you would put them all together, and then you would take a ton of footnotes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're gonna keep doing that. Yeah, that 75-page master's thesis that this part of your brain is worried about finishing, yeah, Don't worry about that. That's so cute. We're going to do 250 plus pages. Why do something when you can overdo it? And so, guess what happens? My superpowers keep me hidden in plain sight because guess what? My cover has not been blown as the chronic overachiever academic. Okay, cool. Now the other part that usually comes up in this part of a superhero story is just that, oh wow, okay, the heroes got it made. They're all good. You hit a bit of a plateau, and I did. Very shortly, I was back to my same energy levels. I was managing depressive bouts, seemed reasonably well. Again, cover wasn't blown, and in that plateau period, I came off my meds. I did cognitive behavioral therapy. I got married. I had another kid. Got asked to run for office. That's a totally other story. But anyways, it was all good. Plateau period. But we all know in those stories, that never lasts for very long, right? Plot twist number 2 came with a little bit of foreshadowing at 40 when a friend of mine was diagnosed with bipolar. And she started talking about her diagnosis. And the problem was, as she was talking about her diagnosis, all of those key moments in her diagnosis, I'm like, yeah, but I was there with you. Yeah, but we did that together. But that's how we both work. We used to be each other's litmus test. Like, we used to explain our behaviors. No, I'm not that high. She does exactly the same thing that I do. And I'm like, okay, this is really uncomfortable. I can accept this as your diagnosis, but I'm feeling a little uncomfortable about the possibility of this being mine. I got enough to juggle right now because I've just won my first election in an unwinnable seat. The day after that election, my then husband assaulted me, so I'm in the midst of a fun divorce, and I get diagnosed with cervical cancer. So I kind of have enough on my plate. I don't need to add anything else to my stealth management program right now. So I figure, okay, one level, I'm in denial. On another level, it should have been really obvious to me because that high energy level that I talked about getting back, well, it was no longer empowering. It was no longer invigorating. It was like somebody was ripping my guts out and I felt like I was constantly vibrating and that I had a harder time harnessing it to get things done. So I figured, okay, it's probably just stress with all this stuff going on. I'm gonna go seek help. Well, guess what? Surprise, surprise, guess who's diagnosed bipolar 2? And guess what I learned about it? It comes in with built-in stress and all of these other wonderful things, but it also comes in with built-in stealth. We tend to be late diagnosed, and guess what? We tend to be labeled as chronic overachievers with a tendency to burn the candle at both ends, crash, burn, rinse, and repeat. Sound familiar? Yeah. So that's who I am. Okay, so add this to the mix. Now, another part of superhero stories that always comes up is finding your team. I didn't have to look very far to find my team. In fact, very shortly afterwards, my kids started having their own experiences, especially the youngest one, that required medical interventions and appointments and referrals. And in that time, we would learn a lot about ourselves and overlapping diagnoses and similar diagnoses. And that's when the ADHD and OCD would get confirmed. Again, hidden in plain sight, but this is the first time that they were actually revealed. And those are skills that I had relied on for so long and were part of my success. So now the thing is that when this is starting to happen to my kids, my poor son thinks he's broken. He thinks there's something wrong with him. So I say to him, sweetheart, you're not broken. You're an X-Man. You have mutant superpowers. And that's when we started using the language of superpowers. And as I did more of this, where it's like, yeah, I'm embracing superpowers and I'm seeing them as superpowers, I was less and less comfortable with the idea of living hidden in plain sight. Why should I have to hide who I am? Why can't I say something? And it's stigma and misunderstanding that kept me from doing that. My first opportunity actually to go public was while I was Minister of Health. And I don't know if any of you remember the loss of Reed Ricker, but that was the opportunity for me to stand beside his mother and to go public because I wanted to change the system. A system that had looked after sometimes he and I, but others clearly failed him. And who else better to change it than somebody who was like him? But people needed to know that I was like him. They also needed to know that that place that gave us both darkness had also given me some of my greatest successes. Stop and think about it. Why should I have to hide the fact that my ADHD was the thing that made me be able to take all that information from a variety of places and be very strong academically and also strategically as a cabinet member? As the bipolar, it gave me that high energy to get things done, and the hypomania parts of it, but the depressive parts also gave me grounded realism, and it gave me compassion and empathy. My anxiety, oh my God, am I a strategic thinker? I can think 15 steps ahead. I can take us from burnt lasagna to the apocalypse without missing a beat. So that's my superpower there. My OCD, that's where my meticulousness and my professionalism come in. Why should I have to hide that? For as much shit as these things have caused me over the years, they've also served me well. Why should I have to hide that, and why should anybody else have to hide that? And that's the other thing about this, is it makes me think about the idea of, while I've been really fortunate for the most part to be able to hide in plain sight, what about others who haven't been, whose superpowers hulked out on them in a way that they were known more as a diagnosis than a person. They didn't get the opportunity to have their superpowers serve them because of things like stigma and misunderstanding. Now, we often say you can't be what you can't see. So I'm here tonight in front of you being seen, and I have a call to action for other superheroes, others with superpowers. It's time to come out of the shadows. Let's stop trying to blend in. Why can't we be seen for who we are? Why can't we embrace those things that, again, while sometimes can be shitty, can also allow us to soar to great heights? I think we should all have that opportunity to embrace our inner Tony Stark, flaws and all, and to be able to do what he did and stand in front of the world and say, yes, it's true. I am Iron Man. Let's see where the adventure takes us. Thank you.